The security guards rushed to grab the young black man in the rain, but when the elderly woman screamed, "He saved my life," everyone on Fifth Avenue froze at her next words. The alarm blared at 5:30 a.m. Jordan Mitchell's hand shot out from under the thin blanket, fumbling for his phone on the rickety bedside table. His fingers knocked against an empty glass before finding the device. "Just 5 more minutes," he mumbled, but his eyes snapped open at the thought of being late. He couldn't risk it, not with rent due and his mother's new medication to pay for. The floorboards creaked under his feet as he made his way to the bathroom of their small Harlem apartment. The morning routine was mechanical. Brush teeth, splash water on face, quick shower. The mirror revealed dark circles under his eyes, evidence of another night spent worrying about bills. "Jordan? Baby, you up?" His mother's voice, weaker than it used to be, carried through the thin walls. "Yeah, Ma. Stay in bed. I'll bring your pills before I leave." In the kitchen, Jordan counted out his mother's morning medications. The orange bottles lined up like soldiers on the counter, each one representing another chunk of his paycheck. He filled a glass with water and grabbed a banana. Breakfast would have to wait until he got to work. "Here you go, Ma." Jordan entered his mother's room, where Sarah Mitchell sat propped up against 2 worn pillows. The morning light, filtering through the dusty window, caught the gray streaks in her hair. "How you feeling today?" "Better than yesterday." She smiled, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. "You working late again?" "Just until 6. Mr. Peterson needs those quarterly reports done." Jordan helped her sit up straighter, watching as she swallowed each pill carefully. "Need anything before I go?" "I'm fine, baby. Just be safe out there." Jordan grabbed his backpack, the same one he'd used in high school, now fraying at the seams, and headed for the door. A white envelope caught his eye, sticking out from under it. Another late notice. He shoved it into his pocket without opening it. The landlord could wait until payday. The morning air hit him like a slap. Jordan pulled his jacket tighter and started his journey. 3 buses to get from Harlem to his office job in Manhattan. The first bus was already crowded with other early morning workers, their faces showing the same tired resignation he felt. His phone buzzed. Dr. Thompson's office. Jordan's heart rate spiked as he answered. "Mr. Mitchell? This is Amanda from Dr. Thompson's office. Your mother's latest test results are in. The doctor would like to discuss increasing her treatment schedule." Jordan's grip tightened on the phone. "What does that mean exactly?" "The current treatment isn't showing the improvement we hoped for. Dr. Thompson thinks twice-weekly sessions might be necessary." The bus hit a pothole, making Jordan stumble. "How much would that cost?" "With your insurance, approximately $800 more per month." Jordan's stomach dropped. "Oh, I need to think about it. Can I call you back?" He ended the call and stared out the window as the city crawled past. $800 more. The numbers danced in his head. Rent, utilities, food, current medical bills. His $38,000 salary already stretched so thin it was transparent. The Manhattan office building loomed ahead as Jordan got off the final bus. Glass and steel reaching into the clouds, making him feel smaller with each step closer. He adjusted his tie, bought secondhand but carefully pressed, and nodded to the security guard who'd finally stopped asking to see his ID every morning. "Mitchell, those Q3 reports better be on my desk by noon." Mr. Peterson's voice boomed across the open office as Jordan settled into his cubicle. "Yes, sir, almost finished." Jordan logged into his computer, trying to ignore the whispers from the break room. Can you believe Peterson hired him? Probably some diversity quota thing. The same comments he'd been hearing for the past year, just loud enough to reach his ears. The morning crawled by in a haze of spreadsheets and coffee. Jordan's phone buzzed again. A text from his mother. "Don't forget your umbrella. Storm coming?" He glanced out the window. Dark clouds gathered over the city skyline. Great. Just what he needed for his commute home. The rest of the workday passed in a blur of meetings, reports, and ignored hunger pangs. By 5:30 p.m., rain pounded against the windows, and thunder rolled through the concrete canyons of Manhattan. "Heading out, Mitchell?" Peterson stood by Jordan's desk, looking down at him. "Those reports were adequate. Try to be more thorough next time." "Yes, sir, thank you." Sir Jordan gathered his things, realizing he'd forgotten his umbrella at home. The elevator ride down was silent, packed with co-workers who never quite met his eyes. Outside, the rain turned the sidewalk into a mirror, reflecting the city lights in fractured patterns. Jordan pulled his jacket over his head and stepped into the downpour. He had no way of knowing that this ordinary, miserable day was about to become anything but ordinary. As he walked toward the bus stop on Fifth Avenue, destiny waited in the form of an elderly woman and a speeding car about to change everything. But for now, Jordan Mitchell was just another face in the crowd, trying to keep his head above water in a city that seemed determined to drown him. Rain pelted Fifth Avenue like bullets, forming small rivers along the curbs. Jordan ducked under the awning of a luxury boutique, shaking water from his jacket. His shoes were soaked through, each step producing a wet squish that made him wince. The digital display in a nearby store window showed 5:47 p.m. A gust of wind turned umbrellas inside out. People hurried past, heads down, fighting against the weather. Through the sheets of rain, Jordan spotted an elderly woman struggling with her umbrella across the street. She wore a beige coat that whipped around her legs in the wind. "Come on, lady," Jordan muttered. "Get inside somewhere." The woman took another step, her umbrella suddenly wrenching free from her grip. She turned to watch it fly away, taking one stumbling step backward. That's when Jordan saw the car. A silver Mercedes rounded the corner, moving too fast for the wet conditions. The driver was looking down, probably at a phone. The woman remained oblivious, still watching her escaped umbrella. Jordan's body moved before his brain could process what was happening. He dropped his backpack and sprinted into the street. His dress shoes slipped on the wet asphalt. "Hey, stop!" He shouted at the car, but his voice was lost in the storm. The woman turned at his shout, finally seeing the approaching vehicle. She froze, eyes wide with terror. Jordan pushed harder, legs burning. 20 feet, 10 feet, 5 feet. He reached her just as the Mercedes headlights illuminated them both. Jordan wrapped his arms around the woman's waist and pushed off hard with his right foot. They flew sideways as the car swerved, horn blaring. Jordan twisted his body to take the impact of the fall. They hit the ground hard. Pain shot through Jordan's shoulder as they slid across the wet pavement. The Mercedes fishtailed before speeding away, leaving them in a spray of dirty water. "Oh my God!" the woman gasped. "Oh my God!" Jordan's shoulder screamed as he tried to help her up. The rain had plastered his white shirt to his skin, now stained with street grime. "Are you okay, ma'am?" Before she could answer, heavy footsteps approached rapidly. Jordan looked up to see 5 men in black suits running toward them, hands reaching inside their jackets. "Step away from her! Now!" The largest one bellowed. Jordan raised his hands, still on his knees. A hand grabbed his arm roughly, yanking him backward. Another security guard moved between him and the woman. "Check her for injuries," one ordered. Someone called dispatch. "Wait," Jordan tried to explain, but the grip on his arm tightened painfully. "Shut up," the guard holding him growled. "Don't move." The woman was getting to her feet, assisted by 2 of the guards. "My bag," she said. "Where's my bag?" Jordan spotted the brown leather purse a few feet away. He instinctively moved to retrieve it, but the guard twisted his arm. "I said don't move. Get your hands off him." The woman's voice cracked like a whip. "This young man just saved my life." The security team froze. The woman shrugged off their helping hands and straightened to her full height, barely 5 feet, but suddenly commanding. "But Mrs. Thompson," one guard started. "Mrs. Thompson?" Jordan's stomach dropped. He knew that name. "Yes, Mrs. Thompson," she said firmly. "And if you don't release this young man immediately, I'll have all of your jobs before midnight." The grip on Jordan's arm vanished. Rain continued to pour as a small crowd gathered, phones recording the scene. Jordan stood awkwardly, painfully aware of his soaked clothes and the growing audience. "Now then," Mrs. Thompson said, smoothing her coat. "Young man, what's your name?" "Jordan Mitchell, ma'am." "Jordan Mitchell," she repeated, as if memorizing it. "Do you know who I am?" I think so. You're Thomas Thompson's mother, the CEO of Thompson Industries." She nodded. And you just saved my life without having any idea who I was. That says something about your character, Mr. Mitchell. More security personnel arrived, along with a black SUV that pulled up to the curb. Mrs. Thompson waved them off impatiently. I need your contact information, Mr. Mitchell. My son will want to thank you properly. Jordan's cheeks burned. That's really not necessary, ma'am. Anyone would have. Young man, she cut him off. I've lived in New York for 73 years. I can assure you that not anyone would have done what you just did. Now, your information, please. A guard held an umbrella over them as Jordan recited his address and phone number. Mrs. Thompson insisted on typing it into her phone herself, refusing help from her security team. You'll be hearing from us very soon, she said, patting his arm. And Mr. Mitchell? Thank you. Truly. The security team surrounded her like a moving wall, escorting her to the waiting SUV. Jordan stood in the rain, watching as the vehicle merged into traffic and disappeared. His phone buzzed, a text from his mother. Where are you? Everything okay? Jordan looked down at his ruined clothes, his scraped hands, feeling the throb in his shoulder. How could he explain what just happened? On my way home, Ma. Got caught in the rain. He retrieved his backpack from where he'd dropped it, thankful his laptop seemed dry. The crowd had mostly dispersed, though a few people still lingered, phones pointed his way. Jordan hunched his shoulders and started walking, trying to process the last 10 minutes. The temperature was dropping, and his wet clothes clung uncomfortably to his skin. Each step squished water from his shoes. But somehow, he barely noticed the discomfort. His mind replayed Mrs. Thompson's words. You'll be hearing from us very soon. Jordan had seen enough movies to know how these things usually went. Rich people would make grand promises in the heat of the moment, then forget all about you once the adrenaline wore off. Better not to get his hopes up. Still, as he boarded his first bus home, he couldn't help wondering what Thomas Thompson was like in person. The man was a legend in New York business circles, the youngest CEO to take a company public in the city's history. Jordan had read about him in business magazines during his lunch breaks, dreaming of attending college someday. The bus windows fogged up as the heater fought against the wet chill. Jordan's reflection looked back at him, water still dripping from his hair. His mother would take one look at him and know something had happened. She always could read him like a book. Maybe he'd tell her everything. Maybe she'd laugh and say he was crazy for running into traffic. Maybe she'd cry and thank God he wasn't hurt. Or maybe he'd keep it to himself for now. Wait and see if anything came of Mrs. Thompson's promise. The city lights blurred past the window as the bus headed uptown. In his pocket, Jordan's phone felt heavy with the weight of possibility. Would they really call? What would he say if they did? Thunder rolled overhead, but the rain had finally begun to ease. Jordan closed his eyes, exhaustion settling into his bones. Whatever happened next, at least he knew he'd done the right thing. His father had taught him that much before he died. Character isn't about what you do when people are watching, but what you do when no one is looking. Of course, today people had definitely been looking. Jordan could already imagine the social media posts. Black man tackles billionaire's mother on Fifth Avenue. The thought made him groan. The bus lurched to a stop at 125th Street. Jordan stood, his wet clothes making embarrassing noises as he moved. 2 more blocks to home. 2 more blocks to decide what to tell his mother. As he stepped off the bus, his phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Jordan's heart jumped to his throat as he read the message. Mr. Mitchell, this is Thomas Thompson's assistant. Mr. Thompson would like to meet with you tomorrow morning, if convenient. Please let us know what time works best for you. Jordan stood in the drizzle, staring at his phone until the screen went dark. Maybe this wasn't just another ordinary day after all. Jordan stood in front of his apartment door, key hovering near the lock. Water dripped from his clothes, forming a small puddle at his feet. Through the thin door, he could hear the TV playing his mother's favorite game show. He took a deep breath and entered. Ma, I'm home. Sarah Mitchell looked up from her recliner, and her eyes widened. Lord have mercy. What happened to you? Got caught in the rain, Jordan said, dropping his backpack by the door. No big deal. No big deal? You look like you went swimming in the Hudson. She muted the TV. And what's that on your shoulder? Jordan glanced down at the tear in his shirt, where the pavement had scraped his skin raw. It's nothing, Ma. just slipped on the wet sidewalk. Jordan Michael Mitchell. His mother's voice took on that tone he knew too well. Don't you dare lie to your mama. He sighed, walking to the kitchen to grab a towel. Something happened on Fifth Avenue. Fifth Avenue? She turned in her chair to follow his movement. What were you doing there? Jordan dabbed at his wet clothes, wincing as the towel brushed his injured shoulder. There was this old lady about to get hit by a car. His phone buzzed again. Another message from Thompson's assistant. Mr. Thompson would prefer to meet at your residence, if acceptable. Would 9 a.m. tomorrow work for you? Jordan? His mother's voice snapped him back to the present. What old lady? He looked at his mother, then at his phone, then back at his mother. Ma, you better sit down for this. Over the next 20 minutes, Jordan recounted everything. The rain, the umbrella, the car, the security guards. His mother's expressions shifted from concern to fear to disbelief. Margaret Thompson, she repeated. The Margaret Thompson? Yeah, and now her son wants to meet tomorrow. Here? Jordan showed her the messages. Sarah struggled to stand from her recliner. Jordan rushed to help her. Here? Thomas Thompson is coming here? I can tell them no, Jordan said quickly. We can meet somewhere else. Absolutely not. Sarah straightened her back. If that man wants to come thank my son in person, he's going to see exactly where you come from and how we live. Ma, don't mommy. Go take a hot shower before you catch your death. I need to clean this place up. You need to rest, Jordan protested. I've been resting all day. Now move. Jordan knew better than to argue. In the bathroom, he peeled off his wet clothes and examined his shoulder in the mirror. The scrape wasn't deep, but it had started to bruise. Hot water stung the raw skin. Through the bathroom door, he could hear his mother moving around, probably trying to straighten up. The walls were thin enough that he caught fragments of her muttering. Coming to my house? Need to dust. Where's the good coffee? By the time Jordan emerged in dry clothes, Sarah had somehow transformed their small living room. The stack of medical bills that usually occupied the coffee table had vanished. Their few family photos were freshly dusted. The worn furniture had been rearranged to maximize the limited space. Ma, please sit down, Jordan said, watching her shuffle around with nervous energy. You're going to wear yourself out? Did you see the video? She asked, ignoring his concern. What video? Sarah pointed to the TV, where a local news station was playing cell phone footage of the incident. The shaky video showed Jordan tackling Mrs. Thompson out of the car's path, then the confrontation with security. The caption read, Good Samaritan saves billionaire's mother. They're calling you a hero, Sarah said softly. Jordan sank onto the couch. I'm not a hero, Ma. I just did what anyone would do. No, baby. She sat beside him, taking his hand. Not everyone would risk their life for a stranger. Your daddy would be so proud. The mention of his father made Jordan's throat tight. 5 years gone, and it still hurt like yesterday. His phone buzzed yet again. Social media notifications. The video was spreading. You should get some sleep, he told his mother. Big day tomorrow. Oh, now you're worried about my rest? She smiled but stood slowly. What are you going to wear? My work suit, I guess. The blue one? It needs pressing. Ma, I'm going. She paused at her bedroom door. Jordan? Yeah. Whatever happens tomorrow, I want you to remember something. You're your father's son. Don't let anybody make you feel small in your own home. After his mother's door closed, Jordan sat in the dim living room, listening to the city sounds filtering through their thin windows. Sirens wailed in the distance. Bass thumped from a car stereo somewhere below. Normal Harlem night sounds. He pulled up the news video again, watching himself move in slow motion. The caption had changed. Identity of Fifth Avenue hero revealed. Comments scrolled past. That's Jordan from accounting. Anyone know if Mrs. Thompson is okay? Of course, Thompson's security assumed the worst to say. Hope they give this guy a reward. Jordan closed the app. His shoulder ached, and exhaustion pressed against his eyes. But sleep felt impossible. In less than 12 hours, one of the richest men in New York would be standing in this apartment. He got up and walked to the window, looking out at the wet street below. A group of teenagers huddled under the bodega awning, sharing jokes and snacks. The old man from Forby walked his ancient poodle. Normal life continuing while Jordan's world tilted on its axis. His phone lit up with a text from his supervisor. Saw the news. Take tomorrow off. Payday. Then another from Dr. Thompson's office. Regarding your mother's treatment options. Jordan turned the phone face down. Tomorrow would come soon enough. For now, he just needed to breathe. In her room, he could hear his mother on the phone, probably calling everyone she knew. Her voice rose and fell with excitement, pride evident in every word. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets glossy under the streetlights. Somewhere out there, in a penthouse or mansion, the Thompsons were probably discussing him. What were they saying? What would tomorrow bring? Jordan touched his shoulder again, feeling the raw skin beneath his t-shirt. The pain reminded him it was all real. He'd actually saved Margaret Thompson's life. Tomorrow, her billionaire son would sit on their second-hand couch. A cockroach skittered across the kitchen counter. Jordan grabbed a paper towel to deal with it, then noticed 3 more behind the toaster. No matter how much they cleaned, the building's problems always crept back in. "What am I doing?" he muttered, spraying roach killer along the baseboards. "They're going to take one look at this place and what? Judge them? Pity them? Offer help they couldn't refuse without seeming ungrateful?" His father's voice echoed in his memory. "A man's home is his castle, no matter how small." Jordan straightened up, tossing the paper towel in the trash. Tomorrow would come whether he was ready or not. All he could do was face it with dignity, just like his mother said. He checked the locks one last time and headed to his room. Through the wall, he could still hear his mother's excited voice. "And they're coming here, Sister Jenkins. Here, to my house." Jordan smiled despite his anxiety. Whatever happened tomorrow, at least he'd made his mother proud. As he lay in bed, his phone lit up one final time. A message from an unknown number. "Mr. Mitchell, this is Margaret Thompson. I just wanted to thank you again for your courage today. Sleep well, young man. Tomorrow will be a good day." Jordan stared at the message until his eyes burned. Finally, he typed back, "Thank you, Mrs. Thompson. Good night." He set his alarm for 6 a.m. He'd need time to press that suit. At 6 a.m. sharp, Jordan's alarm didn't need to ring. He was already awake, staring at the water stains on his ceiling. Sleep had come in fits and starts, his mind racing with possibilities and anxieties about the coming meeting. He found his mother already up, ironing his blue suit in the living room. Dark circles under her eyes suggested she hadn't slept much either. "Ma, you shouldn't be up," Jordan said, taking the iron from her hands. "Couldn't sleep anyway." She sat heavily on the couch. "Make sure you get the collar crisp." Jordan worked the iron carefully, smoothing out wrinkles while his mother supervised. Outside, the city was waking up. Car horns honked. Someone's car alarm went off. At 7:30, Mrs. Rodriguez from next door knocked on their door. "I saw the news," she said, holding up a plate of fresh empanadas. "For your special guests?" Word spread through the building like wildfire. By 8 a.m., their tiny kitchen counter held 3 different breakfast casseroles, a plate of empanadas, and Mr. Lee's famous dumplings from 2B. "The whole building's talking about it," Mrs. Rodriguez said, adjusting the curtains for the 3rd time. Channel 4 news van just pulled up outside. Jordan peeked out the window. Sure enough, a white van with a satellite dish idled by the curb. A reporter in a red blazer checked her makeup in a compact mirror. "They can stay outside," Sarah said firmly. "This is a private meeting." At 8:45, Jordan's phone buzzed. "Security team arriving now for preliminary check." 3 minutes later, someone knocked. Jordan opened the door to find 2 men in dark suits, wearing earpieces. "Mr. Mitchell, we need to do a security sweep before Mr. Thompson arrives." Jordan stepped aside, watching as they moved efficiently through the apartment. They checked windows, doors, even looked under the beds. One spoke quietly into his wrist microphone. "Location secure. Some media presence outside. Recommend garage entrance." Sarah sat in her recliner, watching the men with a mixture of amusement and irritation. "You make sure your people don't scuff my floors," she called after them. "I just had Jordan wax them." At 8:55, more security arrived. They positioned themselves in the hallway and by the building's back entrance. Neighbors peered out through cracked doors, whispering excitedly. Car 1 arriving, a voice crackled over their radios. Jordan's palms were sweating. He wiped them on his pants for the 100th time. At exactly 9 a.m., footsteps echoed in the hallway. A knock on the door. Jordan took a deep breath and opened it. Thomas Thompson stood there, tall and imposing in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Jordan's yearly salary. His mother, Margaret, stood beside him, looking much more composed than she had in the rain yesterday. Behind them, a man in a pinstriped suit clutched a leather briefcase. "Mr. Mitchell," Thompson said, extending his hand. "Thank you for receiving us." Jordan shook it, trying to match the firm grip. "Please come in." They entered, Thompson's eyes scanning the small apartment. Jordan watched his face for any sign of judgment, but the man's expression remained neutral. "Mrs. Mitchell," Thompson said, turning to Sarah. "It's an honor to meet you. I'm Thomas Thompson, and this is my mother, Margaret." Sarah had struggled to her feet. "Welcome to our home, Mr. Thompson." "Mrs. Thompson." Margaret stepped forward, taking Sarah's hands in hers. "Please call me Margaret, and thank you for raising such a brave son." The man with the briefcase cleared his throat softly. Thompson nodded. "This is Mr. Harrison, our family lawyer." Jordan's stomach tightened. "A lawyer?" "Please sit." Sarah gestured to their couch. "Can I offer you coffee?" "Tea." "Coffee would be lovely," Margaret said before her son could decline. Jordan escaped to the kitchen, grateful for something to do with his hands. The coffee maker gurgled, a cheap model from Target, now serving coffee to people who probably drank stuff flown in from exotic locations. Behind him, he could hear his mother making small talk. Those security men were very thorough. "Checked under the beds and everything. Standard procedure," Thompson replied. "Though I apologize for any inconvenience." Jordan returned with a tray of mugs, their mismatched collection of Yankees merchandise and dollar store finds. He set it on the coffee table, noting how Thompson's cufflinks probably cost more than everything on the tray combined. "Mr. Mitchell," Thompson began, accepting a mug. "I wanted to thank you personally for what you did yesterday. Not many people would risk their own safety for a stranger. I just did what anyone would do," Jordan said automatically. "No," Margaret cut in. "You didn't. I've thought about it all night. If you hadn't acted—" She gripped her son's arm. Thompson's jaw tightened. "Indeed. Which is why we're here." He nodded to Harrison, who opened his briefcase. "Now, we understand you might be hesitant about accepting any sort of reward," Thompson continued. "But my mother insisted, and I've learned not to argue with her." Harrison pulled out a folder. Jordan's heart hammered against his ribs. "We've had our team do some research," Thompson said. "Your mother's medical conditions, your rent situation, your student loan applications. You looked into our personal information?" Jordan's voice came out sharper than intended. "Standard procedure," Harrison interjected smoothly. "For liability purposes." Sarah reached over and gripped Jordan's hand. Her palm was cool and steady against his sweaty one. "What my lawyer means," Thompson said, shooting Harrison a look, "is that we wanted to understand how best to show our gratitude. Money often creates more problems than it solves. But stability, that's something else entirely." He pulled a document from the folder. "This is the deed to a brownstone in Brooklyn. 3 bedrooms, fully renovated, in a good school district. It's yours, no strings attached." The room went silent. Jordan heard a siren in the distance, someone's baby crying down the hall, the hum of their ancient refrigerator. "Mr. Thompson," Jordan started, but his mother squeezed his hand. "Let him finish, baby." Thompson pulled out another document. "We've also taken the liberty of setting up a healthcare fund for your mother. The best specialists, full coverage, no co-pays." Sarah's grip tightened painfully. "And finally," Thompson continued, "a scholarship. Full ride to any university in New York State. Your choice, any major. Starting whenever you're ready." Jordan's vision blurred. The documents on the coffee table seemed to swim before his eyes. "Why?" The word escaped before he could stop it. Margaret leaned forward. "Because you didn't see a rich woman or a poor woman yesterday. You saw someone in danger and you acted. That kind of character deserves to be rewarded. We're not looking for publicity," Thompson added. "No press conferences, no photo ops. Just a chance to repay a debt we can never fully repay." Sarah's voice came out thick with emotion. "My boy saved your mama's life. There's no debt." "Perhaps not," Thompson smiled slightly. "But the offer stands." Jordan stared at the documents. "A house, healthcare, college. Everything he'd stayed awake nights worrying about, laid out on their coffee table between Mrs. Rodriguez's empanadas and Mr. Lee's dumplings. Can we? He cleared his throat. Can we have some time to think about it? Of course, Thompson stood. Take all the time you need. Harrison will leave his card. Margaret remained seated. Thomas, why don't you and Mr. Harrison wait downstairs? I'd like a moment with the Mitchells. After they left, Margaret took both Sarah's hands in hers. I know what you're thinking. Pride is a difficult thing to swallow. But sometimes blessings come in unexpected ways. She reached in her purse and pulled out a small card. This is my personal number. Not my son's office. Not his assistant. Mine. If you need anything at all, you call me. After final hugs and promises to stay in touch, Margaret left. Jordan and his mother sat in silence, staring at the papers on their coffee table. Finally, Sarah spoke. Your father always said good things come to good people. Jordan picked up the house deed with trembling fingers. What do we do, Ma? She smiled, tears in her eyes. We thank God for his blessings, baby. Then we pack. The Thompsons' documents lay spread across the coffee table like lottery tickets. Jordan read each one 3 times, looking for catches, conditions, fine print. There weren't any. We should have a lawyer look at these, he said, running his fingers over the deed's embossed letterhead. Sarah nodded from her recliner. Sister Jenkins' son is a lawyer. I already called him. The morning passed in a blur of phone calls and visitors. Mrs. Rodriguez brought more empanadas. Mr. Lee came to retrieve his dumpling plate and stayed for an hour, examining the house photos with expert commentary about the neighborhood. The building superintendent stopped by, ostensibly to fix their leaky faucet, but really to hear the story firsthand. At noon, Sister Jenkins' son Marcus arrived, wearing a suit that reminded Jordan how underpaid public defenders were. Let me take a look, Marcus said, settling onto their couch with his reading glasses. Jordan paced while Marcus read, his dress shoes clicking against the freshly waxed floor. Sarah watched them both, her hands folded in her lap. After 20 minutes, Marcus looked up. It's legitimate. Ironclad, actually. Better than most contracts I've seen. He tapped the healthcare document. This alone is worth more than the house. How much? Sarah asked. Unlimited coverage, best doctors, no copays or deductibles? Marcus whistled. Millions, potentially. And the scholarship? He shook his head. They're serious about this. Jordan stopped pacing. Too serious? Why would they do all this? Because they can, Marcus said simply. This is pocket change to them, and it makes a good story. Billionaire rewards hero, plays well with shareholders. They said no publicity, Sarah pointed out. Even better. Makes them look humble. Marcus gathered the papers. Look, it's a solid offer. No tricks, no traps. Question is, can you live with accepting it? Jordan sank into a chair. What do you mean? A gift this big changes things. Relationships, dynamics, self-image. You'll be that guy who got the house from Thompson for a while. Some people will be happy for you. Others, he shrugged. Just be prepared. After Marcus left, Jordan and Sarah sat in silence. The lunch crowd noise drifted up from the street. Car horns, music, voices blending into the familiar symphony of Harlem. Your father and I looked at houses once, Sarah said suddenly. Before you were born. Out in Queens. Jordan turned to her. She'd never mentioned this. Beautiful little place with a yard. We had the down payment saved and everything. She smiled sadly. Then I got sick the first time. Down payment became medical bills. Ma, he worked so hard after that. 2 jobs, sometimes 3. Said he'd get me that house someday. She wiped her eyes. Never did. Jordan crossed to her chair, kneeling beside it. We don't have to take it. Yes, we do. She gripped his hand. Because your father would want this for you. A chance to build something without starting every day, already behind. Jordan's phone buzzed. A text from Margaret Thompson. Have you had a chance to review everything? He showed it to his mother, who nodded. Tell her we accept. With gratitude, Jordan's fingers hovered over the keys. Accept. Such a simple word for such a massive change. He typed. Yes, we would be honored to accept your generous offer. Thank you. The response came immediately. Wonderful. The moving company will contact you tomorrow. Everything will be taken care of. Moving company. Tomorrow. Reality hit Jordan like a physical force. I should call work, he said, standing. Let them know I need time off. And I need to call Dr. Thompson's office, Sarah added. See about transferring my records. They spent the afternoon making lists. What to pack, what to donate, what to throw away. 5 years in this apartment had accumulated more stuff than Jordan realized. Every drawer held memories. His father's old tools, school awards, family photos in dusty frames. At 4 p.m., Harrison's office emailed. The house would be ready in 3 days. All utilities were set up. Here were the keys, the security codes, the parking permit. 3 days, Jordan muttered. It doesn't seem real. Sarah was sorting through her medication bottles. Real as that shoulder you scraped saving Mrs. Thompson. The shoulder had almost stopped hurting. Jordan had almost forgotten about it. More texts arrived. Margaret sharing recommendations for local restaurants. Thomas's assistant coordinating with the moving company. Harrison's office requesting signatures on final paperwork. The sun set over Harlem, painting their walls orange one last time. Jordan ordered Chinese food from their usual place. They ate cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by half-packed boxes. Remember when we first moved here? Sarah asked, picking at her low mane. You were so excited about the fire escape. Said it made you feel like Spider-Man. Jordan laughed. I was 17. Everything was an adventure then. You grew up fast after your father. She set down her chopsticks. Too fast, maybe? Had to? No, baby. You chose to. Could have run wild, got angry at the world. Instead, you stepped up. That's why this is happening. Because you're still that same good-hearted boy, just grown up now. Jordan's phone buzzed again. A local news station requesting an interview. Delete. What about your job? Sarah asked. Jordan shrugged. Brooklyn's not that far. I can still commute. Or you could look for something closer to home. She emphasized the last word. Maybe something that uses that business degree you're going to get. Home. The word felt strange. Jordan pulled up the house photos again. 3 stories of brick and possibility in a neighborhood he'd only visited on deliveries. What if we don't fit in? He voiced the fear that had been nagging him. We'll fit just fine, Sarah said firmly. Because we'll still be us. Just us with better heating and no roaches. As if on cue, a roach skittered across the floor. Jordan smashed it with a takeout container. Won't miss that, he admitted. His phone buzzed yet again. Margaret Thompson. I hope you don't mind, but I took the liberty of having the house stocked with basics. Food, linens, cleaning supplies. Let me know if you need anything else. Sarah read the text over his shoulder. That woman's either an angel or trying to adopt you. Ma! I'm just saying, she's called more today than some of my actual relatives. Jordan started to respond, but another text came through, this one from Thomas Thompson himself. Mr. Mitchell, I know this is overwhelming. But you gave my mother something priceless. More time. This is the least we can do. Let us help. Sarah squeezed his shoulder. See? Angels. They stayed up late, packing and planning. The neighborhood group chat buzzed with news of their impending move. Promises to visit, demands for their new address, advice about Brooklyn living. Around midnight, exhausted but unable to sleep, Jordan stood at his window one last time. The bodega lights still glowed. The old man's poodle took its final walk. A group of teenagers argued about basketball under the streetlight. His phone had finally stopped buzzing. The last text was from Margaret. Sleep well, dear boy. Your life is about to change, but you've earned every bit of it. Jordan looked at his sleeping mother, surrounded by boxes of their past, about to step into a future neither of them had dared imagine. Yeah, he whispered to the Harlem Night. I guess it is. The video hit 2 million views overnight. Jordan woke up to his phone vibrating off the nightstand, flooding with notifications. His Instagram followers jumped from 84 to 15,000. Twitter exploded with hashtags. Hashtag Fifth Avenue Hero, hashtag Thompson Rescue, hashtag Black Excellence. Turn on the news, Mrs. Rodriguez yelled through their wall. Channel 4. Jordan grabbed the remote, and his own face filled the screen. The footage played on loop. Him running through the rain, tackling Mrs. Thompson, the confrontation with security. Our top story this morning, The anchor said, "The identity of the Good Samaritan who saved Margaret Thompson has been revealed as Jordan Mitchell, a 22-year-old Harlem resident." He muted the TV as his mother emerged from her room. "They got your age wrong," she said, shuffling to her recliner. "You're still 21 till next month." Jordan's work phone rang. Peterson's number. He answered, bracing himself. "Mitchell, why didn't you tell me you knew the Thompsons? Do you know what this could mean for our department? Listen, when you come in—" "Actually, sir," Jordan cut in, surprising himself with his steady voice, "I'm taking 2 weeks, personal leave. For the move." Silence on the line. "Then move?" "What move?" "I'll email HR the details." Jordan hung up, feeling a weight lift from his shoulders. His personal phone kept buzzing. Texts from high school classmates he hadn't spoken to in years. Friend requests from strangers. Email notifications from reporters requesting interviews. A knock at the door made them both jump. Jordan checked the peephole. Harrison, Thompson's lawyer, stood in the hallway with 2 other men in suits. "Mr. Mitchell," Harrison said when Jordan opened the door, "we need to discuss media strategy." The men turned out to be from Thompson Industries' PR department. They spread documents across the coffee table while Harrison talked. "The story's gone viral. We need to get ahead of it." "I thought there wasn't going to be any publicity," Jordan said. "That was the plan, but social media had other ideas." Harrison gestured to one of the PR men, who opened a laptop showing various news websites. Every major outlet had picked up the story. "People love it," the PR man said. "Young man saves billionaire's mother. Gets rewarded with house and education. It's a modern fairy tale." "Our lives aren't a fairy tale," Sarah said sharply. Harrison raised his hands. "Of course not, Mrs. Mitchell. But people will tell this story whether we participate or not. Better to control the narrative." Jordan's phone buzzed again. A text from Margaret. "So sorry about all this attention, dear. Thomas is furious about the leak. How are you holding up? What do you need me to do?" Jordan asked Harrison. "One controlled interview. We suggest Good Morning America. Pre-recorded, so we can review it before it airs. Then a brief press statement about wanting privacy during your transition. After that, no more interviews." Sarah leaned forward. "And this helps how?" "It satisfies public curiosity while setting clear boundaries," Harrison explained. "Plus, your story could inspire others. Sometimes a little hope is what people need." Jordan looked at his mother. She nodded slightly. "Okay," he said. "One interview." The PR team moved fast. Within an hour, they had a car waiting downstairs to take Jordan to the studio. His mother insisted on coming despite her fatigue. "Not letting you face those cameras alone," she said as Jordan helped her to the elevator. The GMA studio hummed with activity. Makeup artists fussed over Jordan's face while producers explained the format. Sarah watched from behind the cameras, clutching her purse like a shield. "Just be natural," the interviewer coached. "Tell it like it happened." The lights came up. Cameras rolled. Jordan told the story again. The rain, the car, the rescue. The interviewer asked about his background, his father's death, his mother's illness. "And now the Thompsons have given you a house," she said. "How does that feel?" Jordan chose his words carefully. "Grateful. Overwhelmed. But mostly I keep thinking about what my father taught me. That character is what you do when no one's watching. I didn't help Mrs. Thompson for a reward. I helped because it was right. Such wisdom for someone so young." The interviewer smiled. "What's next for you?" "Taking care of my mother. Going to college. Building a life worthy of this opportunity." After the interview, Sarah hugged him tight. "Your father would be so proud," she whispered. Back home, their phones had finally quieted. Harrison's press statement went out. The Mitchell family appreciates the public's interest but asks for privacy as they begin this new chapter of their lives. Jordan's co-workers sent a group text. "Our hero. Drinks on us when you're settled." Even Peterson mellowed. "Take the time you need. Your job will be here." Around sunset, another knock came. Jordan opened the door to find Margaret Thompson, alone except for one security guard who stayed in the hallway. "I had to check on you," she said, stepping inside. "All this attention, it's not what we wanted for you." Sarah tried to get up, but Margaret waved her down. "Please save your strength. I can't stay long." She sat on their couch, looking oddly at home despite her designer outfit. "I saw your interview. You handled it beautifully. Thank you for everything," Jordan said. Not just the house and school. The way you've treated us. Like people, not a charity case. Margaret's eyes softened. I've been thinking about that moment. When you ran toward me, you had no idea who I was. I was just an old woman in trouble. That's rare in my world. Someone who helps simply because it's right. She reached in her purse and pulled out an envelope. One last thing. The deed to this apartment. Jordan stared at her. What? I bought the building. This unit is yours, to keep or rent out as you choose. I thought. She smiled. Well, I thought everyone should have a piece of where they came from. After she left, Jordan and Sarah sat with the new deed between them. Guardian angels, Sarah said again, wiping her eyes. Jordan's phone buzzed one last time that day. A text from Thomas Thompson. You've handled this media circus with grace. My mother's right about you. See you in Brooklyn. The sun set on their last full day in Harlem. Tomorrow, the movers would come. Tomorrow, their new life would begin. But tonight, they ordered from their favorite Chinese place one more time. They sat on their floor amid boxes of memories, eating egg rolls and watching their neighborhood through the window. The teenagers were playing basketball again. The old man walked his poodle. The bodega lights glowed like stars. Home, Jordan realized, wouldn't be just the new house in Brooklyn. Home would be this too, these streets, these memories, these people who'd shaped him. His phone had finally fallen silent. The media storm would pass. Life would go on, but nothing would ever be quite the same. Moving day dawned clear and cool. Jordan woke before his alarm, listening to the familiar sounds of Harlem one last time. A taxi honked. Someone's music thumped. The subway rumbled underground. The moving company arrived at 8 sharp. A fleet of 3 trucks and 12 workers in matching uniforms, they moved with military precision, wrapping furniture in blankets, stacking boxes in neat rows. Thompson Elite Moving Services read their uniforms, of course. Mrs. Rodriguez appeared with coffee and pastries for everyone. Mr. Lee came to supervise the packing of his mother's antique vase, a parting gift he'd insisted they take. The building super hung around, telling anyone who'd listen about how he knew that boy when. You sure you got everything? Sarah asked for the 10th time, watching the workers pack up her medical supplies. They've got it, Ma. Jordan helped her sit in the one chair they'd kept out. The Thompsons' doctor already transferred all your prescriptions to the Brooklyn pharmacy. Sarah clutched her purse, watching as their life disappeared into boxes. Feels strange, doesn't it? Leaving like this. Before Jordan could answer, his phone buzzed. Margaret Thompson, the house is ready whenever you are. Take your time. Another text followed. I hope you don't mind, but I had someone stock the kitchen, and the cleaning service just finished. Everything's fresh for you. Jordan showed the messages to his mother. She shook her head, smiling. That woman's determined to be our fairy godmother. By noon, the trucks were loaded. The apartment looked bigger, empty, the water stains on the ceiling more obvious, the patches of missing wallpaper more stark. Ready? Jordan asked his mother. Sarah stood slowly, leaning on her cane. She took one last look around, at the height marks on the doorframe, showing Jordan's growth, at the spot where his father's recliner had sat, at the window where they'd watched so many sunsets. Ready, she said softly. The super helped them down to the waiting car, a black SUV with tinted windows. More Thompson hospitality. The driver loaded Sarah's wheelchair in the trunk while Jordan helped her into the back seat. Their neighbors lined the sidewalk like a farewell committee. Mrs. Rodriguez hugged them both, crying. Mr. Lee bowed formally. Even the bodega owner came out to wave. Don't forget where you came from, the super called as they pulled away. Jordan watched Harlem recede in the side mirror. The streets he'd walked thousands of times. The subway station where he'd waited in all weather. The park where his father had taught him to shoot hoops. They crossed the bridge into Brooklyn. Sarah gripped his hand as Manhattan's skyline stretched behind them. The Brooklyn neighborhood was quiet compared to Harlem. Tree-lined streets, kids playing hopscotch, brownstones with actual front steps like in the movies. This is it, the driver announced, pulling up to a 3-story brick building. Number 1247. Jordan helped his mother out while the driver unfolded her wheelchair. They stared up at their new home. Fresh paint, clean windows, actual garden boxes with actual flowers. Those are hydrangeas, Sarah said, touching a blue bloom. Your father used to bring me those. The moving trucks arrived as Jordan helped Sarah up the front ramp, already installed, perfectly graded for her wheelchair. The security system blinked green as he entered the code. The door opened to hardwood floors and sunlight. The entryway stretched into a large living room with bay windows. Everything smelled of fresh paint and lemon cleaner. Oh my, Sarah breathed. Jordan wheeled her through the first floor. Kitchen with new appliances. Dining room with space for a family table. A bathroom bigger than their old bedroom, with grab bars already installed by the toilet and shower. Mrs. Thompson had everything adapted, one of the movers explained. The whole house is wheelchair accessible. They found Sarah's bedroom on the first floor, just off the kitchen. Someone had already made up the new hospital-grade bed with fresh linens. Medical supplies were organized in the attached bathroom. A mini fridge held her medications. For the midnight doses, Sarah read from a note on the fridge. So you don't have to go to the kitchen. Margaret. Jordan helped his mother onto the bed while the movers brought in their things. She sank into the mattress with a sigh. Lord, I haven't been this comfortable since the hospital. Upstairs, Jordan found his room, larger than their old living room. Built-in bookshelves, a desk by the window, and there, propped against the wall, something that made his throat tight, a framed photo of his father, restored and enlarged, smiling in his work uniform. His phone buzzed. Margaret again. The photo was Thomas's idea. Hope you don't mind. We found it in an old company newsletter. Your father worked for one of our subsidiaries. Jordan sat on his new bed, holding the photo. Through the floor, he could hear the movers bringing in their old furniture. Pieces that had seemed cramped in their apartment, but looked almost small in these spacious rooms. A knock at the front door echoed up the stairs. Jordan found a middle-aged woman on the stoop, holding a pie. Helen Barnes, she introduced herself. Live next door. Thought you might like a welcome treat. Before Jordan could respond, another neighbor appeared with a casserole. Then another with fresh bread. Soon the new kitchen counter looked like their old one, covered in welcome gifts from strangers. The movers finished around 4. Jordan tipped them despite their protests that it was already handled. The house settled into silence. He found his mother in her room, arranging photos on her nightstand. His father, his graduation, their old apartment. You okay, Ma? She nodded, touching each photo. Just thinking about how far we've come. Your father used to say, everybody needs a helping hand sometimes. Guess it was our turn. Jordan's phone buzzed yet again. A text from Thomas Thompson. Everything satisfactory? The security system is top of the line. Panic buttons in every room, direct line to local police. But the neighborhood's very safe. Another text followed from Margaret, having dinner with friends nearby. May we stop by to see you settled? Jordan showed the messages to his mother. She smoothed her hair. Well, I'd better freshen up then. You don't have to entertain tonight, Ma. You need rest. Jordan Mitchell, those people gave us a house. The least we can do is offer them coffee. He helped her to the bathroom, then went to unpack the kitchen. Their old dishes looked like children's toys in the massive cabinets. Their worn pots and pans hung awkwardly on the fancy pot rack. But then he found Mrs. Rodriguez's empanada plate and Mr. Lee's dumpling dish. He placed them carefully in the cabinet. Old life, meet new life. The doorbell rang just as the sun was setting. Jordan opened it to find Margaret and Thomas Thompson on their stoop, looking oddly normal in casual clothes. We brought Chinese food. Margaret held up bags. From your favorite place in Harlem. They delivered to Brooklyn now. Jordan let them in, watching as they moved through the house they'd given away like it was nothing. His mother called greetings from her room, and soon they were all settled in the living room, eating egg rolls from paper plates. To new beginnings, Thomas raised his soda can. They'd forgotten to unpack the glasses. Sarah raised her can, and to Angel's in expensive suits. Later, after the Thompsons left and his mother was asleep in her new bed, Jordan stood in his new bedroom. The city's sounds were different here. No basketball games. No loud music. Just distant traffic and wind in the trees. His phone lit up one last time. A text from his old super. Place ain't the same without you. But proud of you, kid. Real proud. Jordan looked out his window at his new street, his new life. Tomorrow he'd figure out the bus routes, find the closest grocery store, learn this new rhythm. But tonight, he just stood there, holding his father's photo, letting himself feel it all. The fear, the gratitude, the hope. Home, version 2.0. Time to make it their own. 1 month into their new life, Jordan still woke up confused. The silence threw him off. No sirens, no morning arguments from next door, no subway rumble. Just birds and occasional car doors. He found his mother already up, sitting in her wheelchair by the bay window. She did this every morning now, watching the neighborhood wake up. Mrs. Chin's doing her Tai Chi again, Sarah reported, sipping her coffee. Real coffee now from the fancy machine Thomas had sent over. And the Collins kids are waiting for their school bus. Jordan checked his watch, 7:15 a.m. No need to rush. His new commute to Manhattan took half the time, thanks to the express train nearby. Physical therapist coming today? He asked, pouring his own coffee. Sarah nodded. And Margaret's stopping by for lunch. She's helping me plan the garden. The garden. Another new thing. The small patch of earth behind their house had become his mother's project. Margaret brought seed catalogs and gardening books, spending hours discussing soil types and growing seasons. Jordan's phone buzzed. A group text from work. The office had changed since his story went viral. Peterson was suddenly his biggest fan, bragging about my guy who saved Mrs. Thompson. The break room whispers had turned to friendly greetings. Don't forget your college appointment, Sarah called as he grabbed his bag. Right. The admissions counselor at NYU. Another Thompson connection, though Jordan had insisted on applying through normal channels. The morning commute felt luxurious compared to his old 3-bus journey. One express train, 40 minutes door to door. He even got to work early most days. His desk had moved to corner spot with a window view. Peterson's idea. Can't have our heroes stuck in the back anymore. Jordan settled into his morning routine, but his mind kept drifting to the afternoon's appointment. College. The dream he'd put on hold when his father died. At lunch, he walked to the park instead of eating at his desk. His phone buzzed with the usual check-ins. Margaret, Sarah tells me you're meeting NYU today. So excited for you. Thomas, let me know if you need any recommendations. Half their business school board are golf buddies. Mrs. Rodriguez, miss you, me hijo. The building's too quiet now. Mr. Lee, how's my vase? Send picture, please. The Thompsons' generosity hadn't stopped with the house. Every week brought something new. Gardening supplies for Sarah, book recommendations for Jordan, connections and opportunities casually dropped into conversation. At 3 p.m., Jordan left work early for his NYU appointment. The campus hummed with energy. Students sprawled on lawns, enjoying the fall weather. The admissions counselor, Dr. Park, was a small woman with kind eyes. Mr. Mitchell, please sit. Jordan handed over his application materials, high school transcripts, SAT scores from 3 years ago, letters of recommendation. I know my grades aren't spectacular, he started. But your life experience is, Dr. Park interrupted. Not many applicants have saved lives on Fifth Avenue. I'd rather not have that factor in. She smiled. Integrity. Good. Let's look at your academic record. For the next hour, they discussed options. Part-time studies to start, then full-time once he found his rhythm. Business administration with a focus on nonprofit management. Spring semester starts in January, Dr. Park said. I think we can make this work. Jordan left campus feeling lighter. On the train home, he watched the city blur past, remembering all those mornings he commuted past NYU, dreaming of being a student there. His phone buzzed. Sarah, Mrs. Chun brought dumplings. Almost as good as Mr. Lee's. Come hungry. The house glowed warmly as Jordan climbed the front steps. Inside, he found his mother and Mrs. Chun at the kitchen table, surrounded by takeout containers. How was the meeting? Sarah asked before he could even set down his bag. Good. Really good. Jordan grabbed a dumpling. They think I can start in January. Sarah clapped her hands. Mrs. Chin nodded approvingly. Smart boy. My grandson, also NYU. Maybe you study together? After Mrs. Chun left, Jordan helped his mother into her chair for her evening exercises. The physical therapy was working. She moved easier now, had more energy. Margaret called while you were out, Sarah said, lifting small weights. Asked if we're free for dinner Sunday. At their place, Jordan nearly dropped the weight he was spotting. Their place? Apparently Thomas has a chef who makes amazing soul food. Sarah smiled. Margaret says we're family now. Might as well act like it. Family. The word hung in the air. Jordan thought about the past month. Margaret's daily texts, Thomas's quiet support, the way they'd seamlessly woven themselves into the Mitchells' lives. His phone buzzed again. Thomas, Park called. Welcome to NYU. Don't worry about the deposit, handled? Jordan started to protest, but another text followed. Before you argue, consider it an investment in my future golf partner. Sarah read the messages over his shoulder. Those Thompson men and their golf. Ma, we can't keep accepting. Baby, she cut him off. Sometimes blessings flow like a river. You can fight the current, or you can learn to swim. Later that night, Jordan sat in his room, working on his 2 weeks' notice for Peterson. The window was open, letting in the unfamiliar Brooklyn night sounds, leaves rustling, distant children playing, someone practicing piano. His college acceptance letter lay on his desk, next to his father's photo. Look at us now, Dad, he whispered. His phone lit up. Margaret, Sarah told me the good news. So proud of you, dear boy. You're going to change the world someday. Another text followed. Oh, and tell your mother the hydrangea bulbs arrive tomorrow. Blue ones, like your father used to bring her. Jordan looked out at the garden, where Sarah's first plants were starting to sprout. New life pushing through old earth. Kind of like them. A final text buzzed through Mrs. Rodriguez. Hey, college boy. Building meeting tomorrow. We're voting on using your old apartment as a community space. Come visit soon, okay? Jordan smiled. Old life, new life. Somehow they were making it work. Downstairs, he heard his mother humming. An old gospel song she used to sing when he was little. The physical therapist said singing was good for her breathing. The night settled around their house, their home. Tomorrow would bring more changes, more adjustments, more blessings to navigate. But tonight, Jordan Mitchell sat in his room in Brooklyn, listening to his mother sing, surrounded by the proof that sometimes fairy tales came true. Even for people like them. Especially for people like them. 3 months after the move, Jordan stood on Fifth Avenue, in almost the exact spot where everything had changed. The winter wind cut through his new wool coat, a Christmas gift from Margaret, as he waited for the light to change. His phone buzzed with the group chat he'd never expected to be part of. Margaret, don't be late. Sarah's already here, helping with dinner prep. Thomas, tell my mother to stop backseat cooking. Poor Chef Jean is about to quit. Sarah, I'm just suggesting more pepper. Soul food needs soul. Sunday dinner at the Thompsons had become a weekly tradition. Jordan still felt strange pulling up to their Upper East Side mansion, but his mother had adapted seamlessly, trading recipes with their chef and teaching Margaret how to make proper cornbread. The light changed. Jordan crossed the street, remembering the rain, the screech of tires, the split-second decision that had altered everything. The spot where he'd tackled Mrs. Thompson was now marked by a small plaque on the building wall, site of the Thompson-Mitchell incident, where character met destiny. Jordan had protested the plaque. Thomas had insisted. People should remember that ordinary moments can become extraordinary. Inside the Thompson Industries building, the security guard nodded respectfully. Evening, Mr. Mitchell. His new office was on the 47th floor, part of the management training program he'd started last month. The view still stunned him. Manhattan spread out like a glittering map, the Brooklyn Bridge pointing toward home. Mitchell! Thomas's voice boomed from the doorway. Ready to head out? Mother's threatening to start without us. Jordan grabbed his briefcase. Real leather, another Thompson gift he'd tried to refuse. Sarah's teaching your chef about collard greens, isn't she? God help us all. Thomas laughed. Cars waiting downstairs. In the elevator, Thomas pulled out his phone. NYU called. Your midterm grades are excellent. You're checking my grades now? Consider protecting my investment. Thomas smiled. Besides, Margaret would kill me if I didn't keep tabs on her favorite not-quite-adopted son. The car wound through Manhattan traffic. Jordan's phone buzzed again. Mrs. Rodriguez in the old neighborhood group chat. Garden club meeting tomorrow. Sarah, we need your hydrangea expertise. His mother had turned their old apartment into a community center, teaching gardening classes via video chat. The super had installed planters on the roof. Even Mr. Lee contributed, though he claimed Chinese gardening was completely different. At the Thompson mansion, they found Sarah holding court in the kitchen. She sat in her wheelchair, decorated with Christmas lights she refused to take down, directing Chef Jean on the proper way to season chicken. "There's my boys." Margaret hurried over to hug them both. "Jordan, tell Jean that your mother's right about the paprika." Dinner was a mix of cultures. Chef Jean's French techniques meeting Sarah's soul food recipes. The formal dining room echoed with laughter as Sarah told stories about Jordan's childhood. And then she wheezed through tears of laughter. "This boy tried to convince his teacher he couldn't do his homework because our cat ate it. We didn't even have a cat." In my defense, Jordan protested, "I was 6. Thomas raised his wine glass. To creative excuses. And to family. Both born and chosen. After dinner, while Chef Jean and Sarah debated dessert options, Margaret pulled Jordan aside. "I have something for you," she said, leading him to the study. On Thomas's desk lay a familiar-looking folder. "What's this?" "Open it." Inside, Jordan found stock certificates. Thompson Industries shares, in his name. "Before you protest," Margaret held up a hand. "This isn't charity. It's investment in talent. Thomas says you have a gift for management." The board agrees. Jordan stared at the certificates. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll keep making us proud." Margaret squeezed his hand. "You know, that day in the rain? I saw your father in you. That same instinct to help, regardless of cost." Jordan's throat tightened. In his pocket, his phone buzzed. A text from his old super. "Roof gardens blooming. Your mama's flowers are the prettiest in Harlem." Back in the dining room, Sarah and Chef Jean had compromised on dessert. French technique, Southern flavors. Thomas talked about Jordan's progress in the training program, while Margaret showed Sarah photos of her latest charity project. Jordan watched them all. This unlikely family built from a moment of crisis. His mother's wheelchair now had racing stripes, courtesy of Thomas's car designer. Margaret wore a handmade scarf from Mrs. Rodriguez. Chef Jean was writing down Sarah's recipes. His phone buzzed one last time. A news alert. Thompson Industries announces new community development initiative, led by rising star Jordan Mitchell. He hadn't even known about the announcement. Thomas caught his eye and winked. "You did this?" Jordan asked later, as they stood on the terrace watching the city lights. "You did this," Thomas corrected. "I just opened the door. You walked through it." Below them, Fifth Avenue stretched like a river of light. Somewhere out there, a plaque marked where their stories had intersected. But the real story wasn't in the moment of rescue. It was in everything that came after. It was in Sarah's flourishing garden and strengthening body. In the community center, growing in their old apartment. In the stack of college textbooks on Jordan's desk and the Thompson Industries badge on his belt. "Your father would be proud," Sarah said later, as Jordan helped her into their car. "Not just of the success, of the man you've become." They drove home to Brooklyn, to their house with its warm lights and blooming garden. Mrs. Chin's grandson waited on their steps, a study group partner from NYU. Inside, books and papers covered the dining table. "Good dinner?" the grandson asked. "Good everything," Jordan replied. Later that night, Jordan stood in his room, looking at his father's photo. "We made it, Dad," he whispered. "Different path than we planned, but we made it." His phone lit up one last time. "Margaret, thank you for letting us be part of your story." Jordan looked out at the Brooklyn night, at the garden his mother had built, at the life they'd never expected. He texted back, "Thank you for helping us write a new chapter." In the distance, Manhattan glittered. Fifth Avenue was out there, where a split-second choice had changed everything. But the real miracle wasn't the rescue or the rewards. It was this: two families, broken in different ways, finding each other in a moment of crisis. Healing each other. Building something new. Jordan Mitchell, son of Harlem, student at NYU, rising star at Thompson Industries, sat at his desk and opened his management textbook. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new chances to make his father proud. But tonight, he was exactly where he needed to be, where character had met destiny, and destiny had smiled. Sarah's voice drifted up from her garden, humming that old gospel song. Upstairs, Jordan Mitchell turned a page, ready for whatever came next. Sometimes fairy tales did come true, but the real magic wasn't in the moment of rescue. It was in all the moments after, in the choices you made when the cameras stopped rolling, in the person you became when blessing met preparation, in the family you built, one Sunday dinner at a time.